In this video, I'm about to show you how Mayor Brandon Johnson is absolutely furious after Chicago landlords issued a stunning warning that companies are done with this city. Not frustrated, not concerned. Done. That's the word they used. Done. And let me tell you, when the people who own the building start talking like that, you know we're in serious trouble. These aren't activists. These aren't politicians. These are the men and women who pour their life savings into commercial real estate. They borrow millions from banks. They sign personal guarantees. And when they say companies are done, they're not guessing. They're looking at their empty floors, their defaulting tenants, and their shrinking bank accounts. The mayor had a meltdown behind closed doors. He called the landlords greedy and out of touch. But the landlords have the receipts. They have the data. And they have the stories of businesses that have had enough. Let me break down what's really happening, which landlords are speaking out, and why you should be paying attention. Let me start with what triggered this whole mess. Last month, a group of over 100 commercial landlords in Chicago sent a letter to Mayor Brandon Johnson. It wasn't a friendly letter. It wasn't a let's work together letter. It was a warning. The letter said, and I'm paraphrasing from the copy that was published in Crane Chicago Business, our tenants are leaving. They are not renewing their leases. They are moving to the suburbs, to Indiana, to Florida. And if nothing changes, half of our buildings will be empty within 2 years. The landlords didn't mince words. They listed the reasons: crime, taxes, the broken permit system, the anti-business attitude coming out of City Hall. They said that every time the mayor proposes a new tax or a new regulation, they get calls from their tenants saying, "We're done." The letter ended with a plea. Stop blaming businesses for leaving. Start fixing the problems that make them want to leave. According to sources who spoke to the Sun-Times, Mayor Johnson read the letter in a staff meeting and lost his temper. He threw the letter on the table and said, "These people have no idea what they're talking about. They're protecting their own profits at the expense of working families." He then went on a rant about corporate greed and landlord exploitation. One staff member said the mayor was visibly shaking with anger. Another said he threatened to go after the landlords who signed the letter. But here's the thing, the landlords didn't back down. They released the letter to the press, they gave interviews, they showed up at a city council meeting and testified for 3 hours about the crisis they're facing. And the mayor, he refused to meet with them. He sent a deputy. That's not leadership. That's hiding. Let me tell you about a landlord named Steve. I'm not using his full name because he's worried about retaliation from City Hall, but his story is real. Steve owns 4 commercial buildings in the Loop. He bought them over 30 years. They were his retirement plan. His kids were supposed to inherit them, but in the last year alone, Steve has lost 20% of his tenants. 20%. That's not a bad year. That's a catastrophe. Who left? A law firm that had been in one of his buildings for 20 years. They moved to a suburb called Oak Brook. Said it was cheaper and safer. A tech startup that was growing fast. They moved to Austin, Texas. Said they couldn't find enough workers who wanted to live in Chicago. A small accounting practice. The owner retired early because he didn't want to deal with the crime anymore. Steve told me, "I'm losing $50,000 a month. I've laid off my building engineer. I've stopped doing repairs. I'm just trying to keep the lights on." Steve is not a billionaire. He's a guy who worked hard and took risks. And now he's watching his life's work crumble because the mayor would rather give speeches than solve problems. The mayor's office says that landlords like Steve are collateral damage in the fight for economic justice. That's a direct quote from a press release. Collateral damage. That's what they call a man who spent 30 years building something. It's insulting, and it's exactly why the business community has turned against this administration. Here's a specific example of a company that left because of the very issues the landlords warned about. A company called Velocity Solutions. They're a tech firm that provided software for logistics companies. They had 200 employees in Chicago. They were in a building owned by one of the landlords who signed the letter, and last summer they announced they were moving to Tampa, Florida. Why? The CEO, a woman named Rachel, gave an exit interview to the Tampa Bay Times. She said, "We loved Chicago. Our employees loved Chicago. But we couldn't handle the crime anymore. 3 of our employees were mugged in 1 month. Our office was broken into twice. Our insurance premiums went up by 40%, and then the city proposed a new tax on software companies. That was the last straw." Rachel said that Florida recruited her. They offered tax incentives. They introduced her to other tech CEOs. They made her feel welcome. Chicago, she said, made her feel like a target. The mayor's response when asked about Velocity Solutions, he said, "One company doesn't define our city." That's the same line he used when Citadel left. One company. And then another. And another. At some point, you have to stop saying one company and start asking why so many companies are leaving. The landlords warned the mayor about this. They told him that tenants were unhappy. They told him that crime was driving businesses away. They told him that taxes were too high. He didn't listen. And now 200 families are packing up and moving to Florida. Those families were paying property taxes. They were shopping at local stores. They were sending their kids to local schools. All of that is gone. While Chicago is bleeding businesses, the suburbs are having a party. Places like Oak Brook, Schaumburg, Lisle, and Naperville are seeing a boom in office construction. According to a report by JLL, office vacancy in the Chicago suburbs is only about 15% compared to over 22% in the city. That's a huge difference. And that difference is getting bigger. Why are companies choosing the suburbs over the city? Lower taxes, lower crime, easier parking, and mayors who actually want their business. The village of Schaumburg has a dedicated economic development team that calls companies and asks, "What can we do to help you move here?" The city of Chicago's economic development team, by contrast, is mostly focused on enforcing regulations and collecting fees. One landlord I talked to, a woman named Maria, owns a building in the West Loop. She said, "I had a tenant who was paying me $30,000 a month. They moved to Schaumburg and cut their rent in half. Half. They also cut their property taxes by 60%, and they stopped worrying about their employees getting carjacked in the parking lot." Maria's now trying to sell her building. She's been on the market for 8 months. No offers. Because no one wants to buy an office building in Chicago right now. The mayor says that the suburbs are poaching businesses from the city. That's the word he used, poaching. But you can't poach something that wants to leave. These companies aren't being kidnapped. They're fleeing. And the landlords warned the mayor that this was happening. They begged him to do something. He didn't. And now the suburbs are reaping the benefits. Let me tell you about a landlord who got creative out of desperation. His name is Tom. He owned a 15-story office building in the South Loop. It was built in the 1980s. It was never a trophy building, but it was solid. After the pandemic, Tom's occupancy dropped from 90% to 40%. He couldn't pay his mortgage. The bank was threatening foreclosure. So Tom did something drastic. He converted his office building into self-storage units. Yes, self-storage. He tore out the cubicles, ripped up the carpet, and installed metal storage lockers. He told me, "Nobody wants office space, but everyone wants storage. People are downsizing. They're moving. They need a place to put their stuff." Tom's building is now fully occupied with storage units. He's making money again. But he's employing maybe 10 people instead of the 500 who used to work there, and he's paying a fraction of the property taxes he used to pay. Tom's story is a microcosm of what's happening across the city. Office buildings are becoming storage units, data centers, or apartment buildings. They're not generating the same tax revenue. They're not supporting the same number of jobs. And the workers who used to fill those buildings are gone. They're working from home, or they've left the city entirely. The landlords warned the mayor that this was coming. They said, "If you don't make the city safer and more affordable, we're going to lose our tenants." The mayor didn't listen. And now Tom's building is a storage locker. That's not progress, that's survival. So how did Mayor Brandon Johnson respond to the landlord's warning? Did he say, "Let's work together"? Did he say, "I hear your concerns and I'll make changes"? No. He doubled down. He proposed a new tax on commercial parking spaces. He proposed a new fee on delivery trucks. He proposed increasing the city's portion of the sales tax. Every single proposal was designed to squeeze more money out of the businesses that are still here. The landlords were furious. They released a second letter, this one even more strongly worded than the first. It said, "Your policies are destroying the commercial real estate market. Your refusal to listen is driving businesses away, and your new taxes will be the final nail in the coffin." The landlords then did something unprecedented. They endorsed a primary opponent for the mayor's ally on the city council. They're putting money into local elections. They're organizing. They're fighting back. The mayor called a press conference to respond. He stood at a podium and said, "These landlords are not interested in solutions. They're interested in protecting their own wealth. They don't care about working families. They don't care about affordable housing. They only care about their bottom line. He then pivoted to his usual talking points about systemic racism and economic inequality. He didn't address a single specific concern raised by the landlords. He didn't talk about crime. He didn't talk about taxes. He just blamed and deflected. I've been watching Chicago politics for a long time. I've seen mayors who were ineffective. I've seen mayors who were corrupt, but I've never seen a mayor who is this allergic to listening. The landlords are screaming from the rooftops that the city is burning, and the mayor is arguing about the color of the fire trucks. Let me tell you about some brands that are still in Chicago. They haven't given up, and I want to give them credit because they're fighting a tough battle. One of them is Goose Island, the beer company. They've been in Chicago since 1988. They're now owned by Anheuser-Busch, but their heart is still here. Their brewery on the north side is still operating. They're still hiring. They're still investing. Why are they staying? Because their brand is Chicago. They can't be Goose Island in Florida. That wouldn't make sense. So they're stuck. But even Goose Island is struggling. Their taproom sales are down because fewer people are coming downtown. They've had to lay off some staff. They're hoping things get better, but they're not optimistic. Another brand that's staying is Vienna Beef, the hot dog company. They've been in Chicago since 1893. That's over 130 years. They make the hot dogs at all the classic Chicago joints. Portillo's, the Wiener Circle, Superdog. Vienna Beef is not leaving. They can't. Their entire identity is Chicago. But they're also struggling. Their CEO said in an interview that they've seen a drop in sales because the tourism and convention business hasn't fully recovered. Then there's Garrett Popcorn. You know Garrett's. The popcorn mix with cheese and caramel. They're based in Chicago. They have stores all over the city and the suburbs. They're still here, but they've closed a few downtown locations because foot traffic is down. Their CEO said they're cautiously optimistic about the future. That's corporate speak for we're scared, but we don't want to admit it. These brands are the canaries in the coal mine. If they start leaving, the city is truly done. The landlords know this. That's why they're warning the mayor. Because once the iconic brands go, there's nothing left. The landlord's warning isn't just about big office buildings, it's about the small businesses that depend on the office workers, the coffee shops, the dry cleaners, the sandwich places, the shoe repair shops. When the offices empty out, these small businesses die, and the landlords see it happening in real time. I talked to a landlord named Jerry who owns a building on LaSalle Street. His building is mostly law firms. They've been there for decades, but in the last 2 years, he's lost 3 of his 5 tenants. The 2 that remain are using maybe half the space they used to, so Jerry's building is about 60% empty. And the small businesses in his lobby? The coffee shop closed, the newsstand closed, the shoe shine stand closed. The guy who ran the shoe shine stand had been there for 40 years. He was crying when he packed up his stuff. He said, "Nobody comes to work anymore. I have no customers." Jerry told me, "I feel responsible for that man. I feel responsible for my tenants. But what can I do? I can't force people to come back to the office. I can't lower my rent enough to make it worth their while because I have a mortgage to pay. I'm trapped." Jerry is now in negotiations with his bank to modify his loan. He's not sure if they'll agree. He might lose his building. Everything he worked for, gone. The landlords warned the mayor about this domino effect. They said, if you don't bring workers back downtown, the small businesses will die. The mayor said, we need to focus on affordable housing, not subsidizing downtown landlords. That's a false choice. You can care about affordable housing and downtown recovery at the same time, but the mayor doesn't see it that way. To him, it's us versus them, and that's why the city is falling apart. Let me bring this home to you. How does the landlord's warning affect your retirement? Directly and painfully. If you own property in Chicago, your property taxes are going to go up to make up for the lost commercial revenue. If you rent, your rent is going to go up because landlords have to cover their costs. If you have a pension invested in Illinois-based funds, those funds are losing money because the commercial real estate market is collapsing. The Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, which covers many public employees, has a significant portion of its portfolio invested in Illinois real estate. According to their annual report, that portion has lost over 15% of its value in the last 2 years. 15%. That's money that was supposed to pay for retirees' medical bills, their groceries, their grandchildren's college tuition, and it's gone because the mayor won't listen to the landlords. I talked to a retired firefighter named Bob. He worked for the Chicago Fire Department for 32 years. He has a pension. He was planning to use that pension to take his wife on a trip to Hawaii. Now he's not sure. His pension fund has been cutting benefits. They say it's because of market conditions. But Bob knows the truth. It's because the city is failing. The businesses are leaving, the tax base is shrinking, and his pension is in jeopardy. Bob told me, I put my life on the line for this city. I ran into burning buildings, and now the mayor is telling me that landlords are the problem? No, the problem is that nobody is in charge. The problem is that the mayor would rather fight than fix. Bob is right, and he's not alone. Thousands of retirees are watching their savings dwindle because the people in charge refuse to listen. Here's the truth that Mayor Brandon Johnson doesn't want to hear. His fury won't save the city. His anger at the landlords won't bring back a single tenant. His blame shifting won't make the crime rate go down. Only action will, only leadership will. And so far, he has shown neither. The landlords have done their job. They've warned the mayor. They've presented the data. They've told the stories. Now it's up to the mayor to respond. Will he lower taxes? Will he hire more police? Will he streamline the permit process? Or will he continue to blame, deflect, and fume? If he chooses the second path, the city will continue to collapse. More companies will leave. More buildings will empty. More small businesses will close. And the people who suffer the most will be the regular people, the retirees, the small business owners, the workers, the families, the same people the mayor claims to care about. So what can you do? First, pay attention. These issues affect your wallet directly. Second, speak up. Write to your alderman. Go to community meetings. Make your voice heard. And third, support the landlords and businesses that are fighting to stay. They're not the enemy. They're not greedy. They're trying to survive. And if they fail, we all fail. The mayor is furious. The landlords have warned him. The companies are done. The question now is whether anyone in City Hall has the courage to change course. I'm not optimistic, but I'm still here. I'm still watching, and I'm still voting. You should too. Stay smart, stay frugal, and I'll see you in the next one.